All right, well, welcome back to Rare Classic Cars. Here's a car that you have not seen in a while, my 66 Catalina, and that's because, well, it's been sitting for a couple of years. You know, with this many cars, I don't get to drive them as much as I would like, and for those who know, this is just a part-time job that I'm doing here for fun on YouTube because I enjoy cars, but I have another job and just get busy. So this one hasn't been out in a while, and it's a shame because I would call it pretty much the perfect car, especially if you were looking for a car in 1966, didn't have a lot of money to spend. I don't know how you could have been, let's say, not satisfied with this particular vehicle. Looks too good, drives too smoothly. The fit and finish is quite good, especially for the era. If you took a test drive of it, pretty sure you would have bought it back in 1966. So let's talk about some of the strange features, quirks, idiosyncrasies of the vehicle. As we look at the front end, the first thing is that this is a stacked headlamp Pontiac. That would come to an end a few years after this in 1968. It began in 1963. And I think these really are the best Pontiacs. This stacked headlamp trend really was going on in the mid-1960s. Ford had it as well. And I think this is a pretty distinctive and great-looking front end. First year really for this double dual port grille that Pontiac did with... You have the divider, which was typical Pontiac after 1959, have a split grille, but then you also have this middle piece that divides the grille into four. Something that really was initiated here on the 66 front end. The 67 front end for Pontiac would be totally different. If you haven't seen that video with Dick Rusin that I did, that is because the 67 was done in the advanced studios, the 66 was done in the production studios. So the 67 looks a bit different. And I think, they both look quite good. You also have, in terms of a neat feature, these Pontiac butterfly wipers, at least if you got a Pontiac in the U.S. If you got a Canadian Pontiac, you got the standard wipers. And these actually work really well. They're articulated. You can see there's a 4-bar linkage here. And so that they sweep, and then once they get to this point, they stay in a vertical pattern. They don't continue rotating. So they really do a nice sweep of the entire windshield. And none of the other General Motors cars really of the day on the full-size side had something like that. So it was unique to Pontiac. I do love too how this emblem looks like it's just kind of slipping down the front end of the hood. It's made this crease and left this crease all the way down here. And it looks like it's about to fall off. Gives it a little bit of drama. The 66 front end is also a simplified version of the 65. It's a little bit more upright. You'll notice here you do have some leaning forward there of the headlamps, but not like the 65. It's a little bit more straight up and down and vertical, but again, I think it looks quite good. These are the standard wheel discs of the time. You could get Pontiac's optional 8-lug wheels, where that entire wheel is really the brake. There's a lining on the inside, and that's the entire brake and the wheel. Kind of cool. Here, this is just a normal steel wheel with a wheel cover. And those 8 lugs would be pretty synonymous with Pontiacs for a number of years. Couldn't get those on other GM divisions. But of course, they went by the wayside as drum brakes went by the wayside. This car does have power drum brakes, front and rear. No discs for 1966 on your full-size Pontiacs. As we look out back, this is the peak of what was called the Coke bottle design styling. And what does that mean? Well, think about a Coke bottle laying on its side, a glass one. You have this surface that is bowing out and upward. It takes the window graphic with it, as you can see there. And in this car, you have the lower skeg line and that upper portion that kind of denotes the window graphic, both bowing out, and then in plan view or bird's eye view from above, the car's got a bigger hip, if you will. That's the Coke bottle reference. Kind of like a Coke bottle, like I said, laying on its side. Maybe the lighting you can see here a little bit better. See how far inboard the door is relative to the rear quarter, how it's kind of curves outboard? That is Coke bottle design. This car does have the optional fender skirts. These were optional. You did not get them standard on the Catalina. Somebody wanted it and paid extra for it, and I think it gives it a little bit classier look. You could not get the fender skirts, by the way, on the wagons. Now out back, you have a really sexy design. This was really the waning years. I shouldn't say the waning years yet by this point. This is kind of coming toward the midpoint, I guess, of the fastback coupe era. And all these GM fastback coupes, the full-size cars, look fantastic. It would be just a few more model years where this fastback look would be kind of chopped off. The C-pillar would become much more vertical. Think as an example, like the later 60s Impalas with the concave rear window. But I just love this design. And I think it's too bad it went away so soon because it's fantastic. And the car is so wide. Notice how far inboard the C-pillar is, and it pulls inward as it comes rearward, creating this larger shoulder. The shoulder kind of comes out of nowhere to form the Coke bottle design. You know, here you have a very, very small little shoulder that's maybe a half an inch. And as you start running rearward on the car, notice you have this little fillet that begins, this secondary fillet that begins right here, or concave surface. And by this point, it's getting bigger and bigger and bigger. The shoulder's getting bigger as you go rearward on the car, giving it that wide look as you approach the rear. So it's wide and it's also low. Here, the fastback coupe really sets up this deck lid that starts to taper. And if you notice here, it has this great kind of curvature, just ever so gently slopes down to the point where it's closing above the tail lamps, and you've got another Pontiac logo here on the back, similar to the front, that looks like it's about ready to slip off the back of the car, and it's left this beautiful crease in its wake. The designers in this era, this Pontiac, the chief designer of the Pontiacs in this time was Jack Humbert. He was an extremely talented GM designer, maybe one of GM's most talented ever. He actually was an interior designer prior to becoming the lead designer for Pontiac Exterior Studios. And I think that the detailing that you see on this car is just emblematic of Jack Humbert overall. He led all of Pontiac design at this point and just did a fantastic job. Out back, you have this pretty large rear bumper, and that helps visually minimize the overall height of the rear, because the bumper, you see it as a different form separate from the deck lid and this trim piece in the middle. Of course, this is a Catalina, so you don't have the really nice piece that the Bonnevilles would have, and you don't have 3 lights, you have 2, but who cares? I mean, is this a fantastic looking, effectively base car or what? This is a base car for Pontiac. It has some options, but this is the low end of the full-size lineup, and it's just a fantastic looking car. In terms of strange features, this car is low, and you notice that when you compare it to, here's an Emerald Lake Metallic XT6. This is a Marina Turquoise is the name of the color for Pontiac. It was the same color in other GM divisions. I believe for Oldsmobile it was Tropic Turquoise, but Pontiac it was Marina Turquoise, the exact same color. Fantastic mid-60s era color. But this car is low. The cowl height and the roof height, especially when you're used to modern day crossovers, even 70s era cars are taller than this. Low, I mean, this is not even, this is hitting me below the hip. And then, you know, here this roof is also extremely low. It's, by modern standards, somewhat hard to get in because it is so low. You kind of have to rotate your body as if you want to get out of it too. You have to move your legs to the right in this case and then push yourself up and out. The ingress egress is not great. But once you're seated in there, the comfort is great. Again, this is a standard Catalina interior except one option. This car has the optional full foam front cushion. Yes, you could actually pay more money to have more padding in the front seat on your Pontiac in 1966. You only got it on the front seat. You didn't get it in the rear seat. There was no option to get more foam padding in the rear. So this rear seat is just standard. And I'll say it's a pretty comfortable bench seat. It's not uncomfortable. once you're in it, it's a comfortable seating position. The only cars that I think are lower are the 59 models, 59, 60, and 61 when they get revised. The seating position would get a little higher. This car has consequently a little bit higher seating position, but it is still not high at all. Gosh, look at that. Look at that fastback design. So beautiful. I almost wish this car didn't have that body side molding, but I think the holes are drilled. Pretty sure that's a factory body side molding. Oh well, still looks good. Let's continue taking a look at some of the cool features here. And the inside has some beautiful ones. First of all, obviously hardtop styling. The pillar here is part of the glass. And you have this open look, no B pillar, just an A and a C pillar on this car. Perfect for a day like this in the mid-70s, driving around with the windows down. Nothing better than this hardtop design. The door panel, again, standard Pontiac. There's no stitching here, but you get, don't get a full armrest, but you get this nice padded armrest. All of the hardware feels great on this. It was common to a lot of GM cars. You have kind of this molded in. I'm sure the designers wanted real stitching, but somebody costed it out from the finance team. So these are all little molded in fake seams. But you know what? It looks great. A little bit of bright work here, contrasting color to liven up the door panel. And imagine, again, for a base car, you're getting in this, what value you're getting. This steering wheel is a complete piece of artwork with this lucite, transparent portion, top and bottom, that just glistens in the sunlight. The two-spoke wheel with kind of the floating Pontiac emblem in the middle. Beautiful horn, too. Very loud. And all the hardware here on the column, like the turn signal, just feels great. There's no flash-to-pass feature here. In other words, where you just push it part way to signal your lane change. It's on or off. But it feels, the activation is so solid and positive. It feels rich. Same, look at the sculpted gear shift lever. How beautiful that is. Just, again, pieces of artwork everywhere on this car. This car, I laugh, has the optional dealer-installed Pontiac compass. And the compass moves. It needs to be recalibrated. It's not facing, what does it say, east right now, but yeah, I'll have to figure out how to do that. Those manual compasses never really worked that well in my estimation. Maybe they did at some point, and I just need to recalibrate it. I know where I'm going these days with real GPS, so it's not a huge deal. And then you have this panel, this interior panel, that if it were an upper-end Pontiac like a Bonneville, this would be real wood. Same with the Grand Prix. You get real wood inlays, walnut inlays, too, on the steering wheel. But despite not having real wood, this looks rich. You also have these 3 gauges for fuel, a charging, discharging gauge there for the battery and the clock. Of course, the clock here is only right twice a day. Some people ask, why don't my clocks work in the cars? Well, they never worked for more than about a year new. And it just doesn't bother me. I don't want to take apart the whole dash and risk breaking a trim piece to get a working clock when I have a watch. So remember, this car is almost 60 years old now, and you're dealing with parts that are unobtainable to find. I mean, this trim ring is an example. If you damage that when taking it apart, good luck finding another one in that kind of shape. And almost this 3-dimensional logo here that says Catalina above the glove box. Very thickly padded top pad on the instrument panel here. Automakers were thinking about safety at this point. Except when it comes to the steering wheel. This is before the collapsible column. You crash and your head hits this. It's not going to be fun. This button here is for the optional dealer-installed cruise control. This is a GM cruise control. And you just push that button, set it and forget it. But that's why that is there. This is for the headlamps, the windshield wiper. This is the washer button. Here you have the Pontiac heater. This is a strange feature of this car too. You have normal, rear, which just increases the fan speed, and then de-ice, which makes the air come out up there. But as you rotate this, you see that the temperature increases. If this were an air conditioning equipped car, you had blue and orange bars denoting air conditioning or heat. This is, as it says, is a Pontiac heater. There's no air conditioning here. The IP top pad will look different. There'd be a middle vent up here. There'd be vents over here on either side if this were an air conditioning equipped car. But what's interesting is this, as you rotate, it doesn't just change the temperature, it also changes the fan speed. If I rotate this further, it actually increases the fan speed. So I don't think you can hear it if I put it on. Let's put it on rear. So this would be now high fan speed. Rear just means more air is going to the rear, but if I start turning this down, you hear the fan also slow down a little bit. So it's not automatic climate control, but I think it's pretty innovative that they made the fan speed proportional to the temperature slider. And it looks like it's a second radio. This is the real radio. This one is AM FM. Somebody paid extra for that. That's optional. This car does have power steering, power brakes, AM FM radio, the optional foam front cushion, automatic transmission. Standard was a manual transmission, the fender skirts, and that's really about it in terms of options. Beautifully trimmed brake and gas pedal. I've added a little temperature gauge there. I'll explain why in a moment. Car doesn't really overheat. If it's 90 plus degrees out and you're sitting in traffic for extended periods of time, it can get a little toasty. 220, 225, close to 230, and I'll show you why. It never even comes close to overheating if you're moving. It usually operates, I have a 180 degree thermostat in here at 180 degrees. Before we look under hood, let's take a look at the trunk. During this time frame, you got real trunks in your car. Look at the size of that trunk. Easily fit 6 golf bags in here. Easily. And you can also tell they didn't care as much about fit and finish on the underside of the trunk lid. This is not polished or wet sanded, the same way. You can kind of see the paint has some runs and everything here. But the top side surfaces, the exterior panels in this car, they did a nice job, like I said. This is the 66 Pontiac brochure. And during this era, the John DeLorean era, they were really emphasizing performance. You got a whole page with engine options. And you notice Pontiac Standard, if you got a manual transmission in your Catalina or Star Chief Executive, they were trying to transition from the Star Chief name to the Executive name. So this was not the Star Chief, not the Executive. 66, it was the Star Chief Executive. 256 horsepower. This is the low compression, 389 cubic inch V8. That was the standard engine. Because this car is the automatic, you get the premium fuel 2-barrel carburetor. I said that right. Premium fuel 2-barrel carburetor, 389, making 290 horsepower. If this were a Bonneville or a Grand Prix with the automatic, you'd get the 389 with a 4-barrel, a Carter AFB. Great setup, 325 horsepower. You got the manual transmission of the Bonneville, the Grand Prix, 333 horsepower. All these figures are gross horsepower ratings. And then you could get the regular fuel, low compression in any of the Pontiacs as a no-cost option. Might have even been a credit option. A 338 horsepower 421 4-barrel engine, 356 horsepower 421 3 2-barrel, 376 horsepower 421 3 2-barrel engine. That was the top engine option. If you got a Catalina 2+2, this 421 with the 4-barrel was the standard option. This 389 in here, this one, it is a joy to drive. Best standard engine, one of the best engines in any car that I have. It's fantastic. It's peppy, it's quiet, it's powerful, it gets great mileage, in part because if you take a look at the rear axle ratios for this car here with the turbo hydromatic, standard axle ratio 241 or 256. And for Catalina 2-door and 4-door sedans and hardtop models only, you would get the 241. For the F, you would get, F is 2-door, except 2-door, 4-door sedans and 4-door hardtop models. This car is a 256 rear end, and it's super lazy rear end. It shifts into, I would say, second gear at probably 25 miles per hour normally, and then into third gear at about 40, 45. First gear would be good all the way up to 55 miles per hour if you floor it. It is a super lazy rear end, but you know, the engine doesn't lug. You don't regret it. It actually delivers on the freeway. When I drive this car on the freeway, I get 18 miles per gallon. It's shocking. Here's that 321 two-barrel. This is the dealer-installed cruise control, very standard Dana Perfect Circle cruise control box for the day. Works brilliantly. This is the setup. You can find these on eBay sometimes, these NOS-style dealer-installed cruise controls. Again, this was a GM dealer-installed option, and it works great. And if you want to know what Pontiac V8 engine you have, you can take a look right here. There's a 2-letter code here, Y, and then, let me take a look. YC, that's what that says. That tells you what Pontiac V8 you have. You can look that up online by the model year, because all of these are the same size physically. 389, 421, 326. Any Pontiac V8 between 326 and 455 cubic inches. You can't differentiate externally what size they are. So that's how you tell on your Pontiac V8 what engine you have. And why did I say this car, if it's a 90-some degree day, I have recorded the radiator in here. It came with a 3-row radiator. It's the original radiator that I had record. It lasts far longer than any of the aluminum junk that you get now. But notice there's no fan shroud here, and you only have a 4-blade, non-declutching, just fixed fan, and the fan blades aren't all that pitched. Even when you floor it, you don't hear it. And I think what Pontiac was trying to do, if you got an air conditioning equipped car or a higher performance engine, you got the declutching fan that at low speeds would pull a lot of air through the radiator. At high speeds it was declutching, so you didn't have the noise. Here I think they were going for quietness of operation, because even when you floor it, you don't really hear much from the fan. You hear a little bit. But as a consequence, it's not really pulling much air through at lower speeds. And there's no fan shroud to make it more efficient. So it kind of gets a little bit warmer. Like I said, I've never had this car overheat, and I'm talking about on 90-plus degree days sitting in traffic. You're just driving this car normally around, absolutely no issues. The temperature gauge really never moves off 180, but you're definitely not going to move a lot of air through the radiator like that. Yeah, that was just how it was designed. Single chamber master cylinder, typical for the era. 1 year before 1967, when the dual chamber master cylinder would become mandatory. Again, fantastic engine in these cars. Pontiac V8s, I think, are my favorite V8s of the GM family. What are yours? They're smooth, quiet, they do everything well, they're powerful, they're reliable. Only issues I've really had, I actually haven't had them, typical for any GM engine, except Cadillac water pumps. You notice this water pump has been replaced. I didn't do it, somebody else did it, the previous owner. And the timing chain, these have the phenolic timing chain, I should say phenolic timing gear with the chain. Sometimes that can wear out, teeth break off, and then, your engine stops running. Those are really the main problems with Pontiac V8s. Other than that, very reliable, very durable, run great for long periods of time. I do wish this car being so low and the distributor being in the rear, like all Pontiac V8s, it's sometimes a little bit tricky to get back there. But you get used to it. You just have to lean over. and it's just a joy. We'll start it up. Let's see here. So you can see that fan really it's not drawing all that much air. You can feel it, but so smooth. Sounds great back here too. Love the reverse lamp integration here into the bumper too. So there you have it. How could you not be satisfied with this car if you bought it in 1966? Hopefully you learned a little bit more about it as well. This is, in my definition, if you can find one of these mid-60s Pontiacs, buy it. Buy it, buy it, buy it, as my friend Mark would say, because it's the perfect car. The ride is sublime. It is mushy boulevard ride on these. Pontiac would like to tout the wide track and the handling ability. This car has no handling ability at all. Worse than other GM divisions, but the ride is absolutely fantastic. So you had all the marketing telling you that you would go fast. And truth be told, the engines are very powerful. By this point, you've got the 389 standard, as you saw, the turbo hydromatic, 400 is the automatic transmission. Fantastic combination, flawless, 10 out of 10. Even a base engine, I grade this engine a 10 out of 10. It doesn't feel like it's a two-barrel car. It pulls and pulls, easily go well over 100 miles an hour in this car. I would say well over 110. I've had it up to 100, and there's a lot of pedal left. And it's just a fantastic powertrain. Nothing better. I will say that again. All the classic cars I've owned, nothing better than a Pontiac V8 of this era, the 389 or 421 with the turbo hydromatic transmission of this era. Just fantastic. So hopefully you enjoyed it. What did you think was the coolest feature that I pointed out? Let me know. Thanks again for watching.